So how many of you remember that chart that Deutsche Bank had up this morning with all the white men? You guys remember that? Okay, things are a tiny bit better at Deutsche Telekom. There's at least one more female face than was on that white man. But it's an important difference. Claudia Nemat, who's joining me shortly, is the CEO for Europe and also leads their technology innovation. So I'm very honored to bring up Claudia Nemat.
Thank you.
So initially, I was going to have you give some background and stuff, and I will have you get to your background. But I was struck by your colleague, Mr. Wehmer, saying that Germany can never lead in innovation. Do you agree with that idea?
No, I do agree with what was said about the Mittelstand. Actually, I do believe that there is a great number of companies, especially in the industrial technology sector, who are leading in their category globally. But I also do believe that we need to act faster on technology innovation, which has to do with the digital world. And in the end, we need an ecosystem of smaller, mid-sized companies, very small companies, and leaders, which make the difference.
And how is that culture? Because, the popular belief is, especially from those within Silicon Valley, all great ideas emanate somewhere, north of, San Jose and south of San Francisco. What do you see when you travel all over for Deutsche Telekom? What do you see in terms of innovation beyond Silicon Valley and in Europe?
So I must say, on the Silicon Valley, we have a unique combination of universities, money, small companies, and leading companies, which makes the Silicon Valley, from my perspective, unique. But what I see when I travel around Europe is also that we have, for example, in many of the Eastern European countries, a lot of people who are incredibly open towards innovation. And the fact that we are a connected world makes it actually possible for them to introduce those type of things.
And a lot of times when we talk about Europe, we talk about London, Berlin, but some of the most interesting things that Deutsche Telekom is doing are in other places. Eastern Europe, you mentioned in Zagreb. Can you talk about some of the things that Deutsche Telekom is doing in places that might not be so common for innovation?
Yes, actually, I do believe that when you are working for a large company, you need to disrupt the system. And disrupting the system for me means creating some islands of positive deviation. And therefore...
She's a mathematician, in case you didn't miss the positive deviation.
Therefore, when a lot of people tell you what doesn't work, what doesn't work, and you get tens of papers which say maybe in the year 2020 we can create a new technology, then you can prove in a different country that it works. For example, to give a practical example, in Poland, we last week actually introduced the Firefox Mozilla smartphone, which is actually a very cheap smartphone compared to the iPhone or the Samsung Galaxy, which actually helps those people who have a much lower income.
So for those who don't know, this is a roughly $70, $80
yes.
Phone that instead of using a heavy operating system, it's basically saying the browser is the phone, kind of like what Chrome OS is on the desktop. Why is this the right approach, or why is it worth at least trying?
So actually, it is not meant to substitute what we have, but you need to create alternatives. Yeah? You need to create alternatives to more expensive smartphones, and you need to create alternatives which are significantly cheaper and open. There is another example which we had, and this is what we discussed, which was in Zagreb. Actually, in Zagreb, we created a network which is super fast and actually connects hospitals in the city. And there is actually no delay in the network, and the connection is so super that you can actually exchange the wonderful pictures the gentleman from Siemens showed, de facto when you do a surgery with a patient. Yeah? Because you have it without time delay, and you have a perfect quality, and you can actually reach locations in very remote areas.
So back home, my phone can barely keep from dropping a call, but you're telling me in Croatia, you can actually
Only
do
in
surgery
Zagreb, yes.
over the network,
Yes.
doing surgery. That's how real time it is.
So only in Zagreb where we piloted actually the new infrastructure to see that it really works. And that was an example. I don't want to bore you with technology. We call it TerraStream. But that was an example where many people in Germany said, maybe that is a technology we can consider in the year 2020.
But you guys are trying it now.
We did it, and how did we do it? We actually brought together people from the Valley, people from Group Technology in Bonn, here in Germany, a very passionate leader, which in that case was the CEO of Croatia, and a few crazy people who wanted to be very competitive towards the Germans. And they wanted to show that it really works.
So you've talked about the ways that Deutsche Telekom can innovate, and I think it's as important to look at where companies shouldn't innovate. And a lot of your brethren feel like they need to develop the next killer service, and that's not the approach that you've taken. Why?
I'm absolutely not. A telecom operator is not a Google or a Facebook. Another CEO of that industry recently said a story about his son. And the son asked him, "Daddy, how long do you want to be the CEO of this company?" And he said, "Let me think. Everything in life has its end, maybe 3 or 4 years." And then the son said to this CEO of the telecom operator, "Cool, Dad, you finally can do the real thing. Go to Apple." So my point is, it is always bad if you dream of being something which you are not. Yeah? A telco operator, and us as Deutsche Telekom, we are not a Google, we are not a Facebook, we are not a Apple, we are not a Silicon Valley-based startup company. We should not even pretend that we are the best innovators of products and services. But we must be the best integrator of products and services which are created by small and medium-sized companies wherever they are located, in Eastern Europe, in Israel, in Germany, in the United States, in China. I'm very open to that, but we need to have the platform which allows integration of products and services, which come from the more innovative world, and in combination with our networks, create a wonderful experience for the customer.
I want to shortly get back to the broader topic of Europe and then hopefully talk about a few women's issues, but I want to dive in deeply because the concern that a lot of companies in this space face is that if they don't create their own services, if they just integrate what's out there, that basically they'll just become, and this is a phrase I know you guys love to be called, a dumb pipe. And so I'm curious how you manage to not create the services, but avoid being just paid for your bandwidth, a small margin, when you have to invest these huge dollars in the network.
Because we are the ones, if we get it right, who create a fantastic customer experience. Let me give one experience which comes from Macedonia, super small country in our portfolio. But in Macedonia, we have broadband to go. Click, plop, you can do 5 days of 50 megabit plus broadband access to try. Yeah? And the customer experience is a very simple interface with attractive tariffs where you can plug and play different types of services on this. Yeah? So, and it is the customer experience and the combination with the network which makes it good. Another example is in Germany we launched the music service Spotify. Maybe some of you know this. In other countries, it's Deezer. It actually works very well, also in combination with the network. So it's the experience out of the services which we do in combination with the networks. I have to say, though, there are a few things, but only a few things. Yeah? We do not need thousands of people who try to do innovation, but we need to do a few things where we really want to own the category. And for Deutsche Telekom, that is actually in Eastern Europe TV, pay TV. We want to be the #1 or #2 leading TV provider because we see that TV on all screens is a great experience. And there is another thing which is more important for business customers, that is actually a secure cloud experience. Secure, yeah, the brand name, secure cloud experience, so that you can securely storage your data and use applications from out of the cloud. But these are few things, and it doesn't suggest that we are trying to create organizations with thousands of people who try to invent my taxi, Deezer, Spotify, phone, or whatsoever.
Even taking all that you've said, how big a deal is it, even as you're trying to do these couple new things, that there's companies out there like WhatsApp that are basically eating the lunch of where Deutsche Telekom and other providers have traditionally made a ton of their money is in these voice and text services. Do you just accept that these are going away and find something new, or do you have to fight back?
No, actually, you have, of course, to do a few things which prevent you from being commoditized. And one of the things which we see works very well is actually to have the best connection across all devices, whether you are on a hotspot, in Wi-Fi, wireless, on the fixed line network, and you provide attractive tariffs, data tariffs, in combination with attractive content packages. That is one thing. And we see, for example, in a country like Hungary, even though the economy is quite challenged, that the business is growing, which is not true for the most significant part of the markets across Europe. So there is something you can do by concentrating on new sources of revenue. But the other thing, and that is so difficult for operators, we actually need to, and this is a boring topic maybe here, but we need to change the way we produce the services. Yeah? So the networks are very complex as of today, super complex. Yeah? And I'm using a picture here in my organization, which is, as a telecom industry, we need to take the step from being like a railway company which operates steam engines at the same time of electrical engines. We need to stop that, and we need to actually create a network which consists only of high-speed ICE trains. The whole networks were created by adding technologies of different generations.
So before we get too far down the railway, we only have a couple minutes left, and there's a few other things I want to make sure we hit on. One, I would be remiss last year when Renee Schuster of Telefonica was here. Roaming charges are always a big issue, and I asked him whether he thought roaming charges were too high or too low, and he actually said they were too high. Now, I know you've faced a lot of pressure to lower roaming fees. How do you feel about, again, this is like a core area where companies have made a lot of their money. Where are things today in terms of roaming fees?
Here, I do believe we need to disrupt ourselves. Yeah, it is very bad if consumers travel around and say, "Oh my God, I cannot use my smartphone and I cannot use voice." This is in Germany. I think it was 30 years ago when we said for the Germans here, "Fasse dich kurz," be quick. Yeah, and my mother, who is 75, still believes, even if she has a flat tariff, she has to finish the call quickly, right?
Because you're calling long distance.
Because money goes around, yeah? And I think as telecom operators, we must have an interest to enhance the usage of telephony and data. It's actually, I do not want to go too far in this, but we have a tariff, travel and surf, where actually the tariffs are pretty attractive when you are traveling around Europe. Yeah, we just realized that it should be even more well known. Yeah, so we need to market it even better so that people know that they have something to use when they are traveling abroad.
Well, there's certainly more we could talk to on that topic, but I also want to make sure that we get some of your insights, because I'm curious. You're the daughter of a scientist. You went into math and science. We always talk about this. How do we solve the women's issue? And I don't think there's any one answer. But are there specific things that you think will help change those pictures so that next year when we look at Deutsche Bank or Deutsche Telekom, we don't see so many men, or 5 years from now or 10 years from now?
I think one of the challenges we have is that we have very few women in natural sciences, engineering disciplines, physics, and math. We really have. And leading technology, I really see that, yeah? And even if you want, and I'm really looking for women on all levels, it's quite challenging. Why is that? My personal experience, there's a critical age for kids in the teenage ages, between 11 and 15. At that point in time, it is for female teenagers often incredibly uncool to look for natural sciences, because the boys who do this are normally not the ones which you would consider you want to hang around with, yeah? So one solution would be actually, and you see better results, you have more girls' schools, but this is not what I would recommend. I do believe we need to have more people, more teachers, in particular, who are incredibly passionate about technology. All kids are curious. All kids are curious. I haven't found one kid with my friends who is not interested in how things work. Yeah, I had little kids, a daughter of a good friend, and the mother said, you know, she was 6. Physics is most boring. So then we played for an hour with little magnets and iron and little things. And afterwards, she said to her mom, "Mom, magnetism is the coolest thing on earth." So really, I do believe that in the end, there is curiosity and interest in every human being, specifically the small ones, in how things do work. And we just need to make sure that we do not kill that curiosity as we go. And this seems to happen particularly in women. I got bored as well at school, but I had the luck that my father was a physicist. And he said to me, if you run against a wall a trillion times, you might eventually come through. I must say I tried hard because I didn't understand that he meant quantum physics. Yeah. And I was not a mini particle, but a human being.
But you did manage to break through quite a ceiling, so.
Yes, maybe I took this from that.
Well, thank you so much, Claudia. Everyone, thank you very much. Thanks, Claudia.
You're welcome.